Live in such a way that they don't just listen, they lean in. Because there's something undeniable about someone who refuses to become bitter, who carries their past like a lantern, not a burden, who uses pain as purpose, who wears time like armor, not chain. These people don't have to ask for respect. They radiate it. It rolls off them in every glance, every word, every moment of stillness. And when the younger generation sees that kind of power, that deep, quiet, unwavering force, they'll know they found something real. Because in a world saturated with noise, distraction, and pretense, you will stand out. Not as a voice shouting into the void, but as a steady flame that draws them closer. Not to control them, but to empower them. That's the calling now, not to remind the young who you were, but to show them who you are. To stand unshaken in a world of shifting values. To love fiercely in an age of indifference. To give your story not as a warning, but as a gift. And when they open that gift, when they find within it not judgment but guidance, not shame but strength, not regret but revelation, they will rise, not in rebellion, but in gratitude. And they will carry forward not just your name, but your fire, your values, your voice. Because you chose to live in a way that echoed across a generation. Because you chose to become more than a memory. You became a message. And that kind of message never dies. It lives in the way they speak truth, even when it shakes their voice. It breathes in the way they treat others, especially when no one is watching. It pulses in their work ethic, in their resilience, in their integrity. You won't always see the fruit of your influence, but if you planted it in love and discipline and presence, it will grow. Even in soil you'll never touch, even in futures you'll never see, because true legacy isn't what you leave behind, it's what you build within. And that kind of building is sacred. It's not done with blueprints, it's done with example. With presence, with consistency, with the audacity to live with purpose long after the spotlight has moved on. Let the world chase trends. Let others chase titles. You chase truth. You chase wholeness. And you become the foundation others build on. Because the younger generation doesn't need another influencer. They need an anchor. They need someone who's not swayed by every storm. Someone who doesn't sacrifice principles for popularity. Someone who shows with their life that character is the highest currency. Let that be your standard. Let it show in how you speak to the overlooked. Let it echo in how you forgive those who've wronged you. Let it roar in how you keep showing up even when no one claps. Because the real one, the unshakable ones, the ones who are respected, they don't move for applause, they move from conviction. They don't speak to be heard. They speak because the truth demands a voice. They don't teach for praise. They teach because the next generation deserves more than empty noise. And that's what you are now, a teacher, a torchbearer, a blueprint of what's possible when a human refuses to stop growing. So don't slow down, don't fade quietly, don't surrender to irrelevant. Because the truth is, if you're still breathing, you're still building. And what you build now matters. It matters not just for you, but for every young soul watching from the shadows, waiting to see if greatness can age well, waiting to see if wisdom still walks among us, waiting to see if someone will lead without needing the crown. Be that someone, not for recognition, but for revolution, the quiet kind, the sacred kind, the kind that doesn't shake the ground, but strengthens it. Because when you live that way, not just for yourself, but for the ones who come after, you don't just earn respect, you awaken it. You don't just receive honor. You become the reason it exists. And when you become the reason respect exists, you don't need a spotlight, you are the light. You don't need the room to go quiet, your presence already commands the silence. Because there's a weight to a life well lived, not heavy in burden, but rich in meaning. There's a gravity to someone who has walked through storms, not merely to survive, but to come back with lessons written in their scars. The younger generation will not always understand you immediately. They will test you, challenge you, Question everything you say, but don't mistake that for disrespect. It's curiosity in disguise. It's a yearning for something real. And if you meet them with ego, you'll lose them. But if you meet them with honesty, you'll gain something rare. A bridge between souls, not separated by age, but united by truth. Because while the world tells them to chase attention, you can teach them to chase intention. While the world floods them with speed, you can show them the strength of stillness. While everything around them is shouting for more, you can embody the power of enough. You become the alternative to the chaos. Not by preaching serenity, but by being it. Not by telling them to slow down, but by moving with purpose. Not by telling them to be strong, but by being unbreakable even when you're vulnerable. And that leaves a mark. Not just on their minds, but on their values. Because they're not just learning how to speak from you. They're learning how to stand. They're not just learning how to win. They're learning how to hold dignity in loss. They're learning how to make peace with the past, how to shape the future with humility, how to own their power without abusing it, all because you chose not to fade, all because you chose not to lecture, but to lead, not with perfection, but with presence. And if you keep showing up like that every day, in every space, with every choice, you will create something few ever do. Respect that echoes beyond your lifetime. It will ripple through the decisions they make, the way they raise their children, the way they lead in rooms you'll never enter. And when they speak your name, it won't be just to remember you. It will be to honor you. Because you didn't just live long, you lived right. You didn't just age, you awakened. And in a world where so many people grow older without growing wiser, you will be the rare example that proves it's possible. That greatness doesn't belong to youth. It belongs to the brave. And you were brave enough to evolve, to stay open, to keep becoming. That is why they respect you. Not for what you said, but for how you lived. And that is the highest respect of all. Because when all is said and done, respect is not a medal draped around your neck. It's the feeling you leave behind in every soul you've touched. It's not earned once and worn forever. It's cultivated in the quiet, in the repetition, in the choice to show up with integrity when no one's watching. It's in the consistency of your example, in the kindness you offer when no one demands it, in the strength you reveal not through dominance, but through restraint, through patience, through the power to listen, really listen before you speak. The younger generation can feel when a person is real. They have a radar for authenticity. They may mock your ways, and they may roll their eyes at your stories, but deep down they are watching, not your words, your walk, not your demands, your discipline, not your advice, your alignment. Because the human spirit recognizes greatness, not in noise, but in the presence of unwavering truth. And when they see someone who lives from their values, who honors their time, who seeks wisdom over being right, they feel safe. Safe enough to grow, safe enough to fail, safe enough to listen. That's when influence is born. Not in control, not in power, but in trust. And that trust is built brick by brick, day by day, in how you carry yourself, in how you hold your standards, how you never let pain harden your heart. You become a pillar, not a statue of the past, but a foundation for what's coming. And here's the truth no one tells you. The ones who appear to resist you the most are often the ones who need you the most. But they need you to meet them where they are, not lower yourself, but lift them. Not by dragging, but by inviting. Not by commanding, but by demonstrating. Show them that age doesn't erase ambition. That growing older doesn't mean growing bitter. That life, in its deepest form, is a constant unveiling, peeling back of layers until only truth remains. Let them see that you're still learning, still expanding, still creating. That you haven't resigned to merely existing, you're still becoming. And if you do that, You won't just earn their respect. You'll awaken their own greatness. You'll light the path not with judgment, but with the flame of possibility. You'll become the voice they hear when doubt creeps in at midnight, the strength they remember when life tries to break them. You'll live inside them, not as a memory, but as momentum. And one day, when they are asked who inspired them, who shaped them, or who gave them something to believe in, they will whisper your name, not with fanfare, not with obligation, but with reverence, because you didn't just demand respect. You became the reason it was given. And that is immortality of the truest kind, not written in books, not carved in stone, but etched in the fiber of human lives, in how they love, how they lead, how they rise again after they've fallen because somewhere deep within your spirit taught them how. You became their inner compass, not because you were loud, but because you were anchored, not because you forced them to listen, but because you made them want to understand. You never chased relevance, you embodied it. You didn't demand to be followed, you walked with such integrity that following you became the natural choice. And now, your influence has taken root, in minds still shaping their identity, in hearts still learning how to hold both strength and softness, in souls still uncertain of who they are, but slowly beginning to believe they are enough. Because you showed them what enough looks like. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of peace. Not the escape from failures, but the courage to grow from it. They saw it in your eyes, and how you carried your silence, and how you faced storms without becoming one. And they knew, this is what I want to be. That's the paradox of true respect. You don't chase it. You become the kind of person who no longer needs it to feel whole. And in that freedom, you attract more of it than you could ever ask for. Because the world bows not to those who scream for attention, but to those who live with purpose so pure, it demands to be witnessed. So live like that. Every day, in every interaction, let your life drip with intention. Let your thoughts be rooted in truth, your actions in alignment, your words in compassion. Because respect is not something you wear, it's something you transmit. And if you keep transmitting light despite darkness, despite delay, despite the noise of a world spinning faster than ever, then you become rare. And in a world drowning in shallow attention, rarity is revered. You won't be just remembered. You will be referenced. You will be the story they tell when they speak of wisdom. You will be the name they bring up when asked, who showed you the way? And they'll answer with a kind of quiet power. You did. Even long after you've gone, even long after your voice is no longer heard, your example will still speak. Because in the end, respect isn't what you ask for. It's what you leave behind, and when your life is spoken louder than your words ever could. And when your life is spoken not once, not in grand moments, but consistently, quietly, deeply, it becomes something more than a message. It becomes a movement, a current that flows through time, shaping minds, guiding decisions, softening hard hearts, and waking sleeping giants. The younger generation, whether they realize it now or years from now, will come to see you not as someone who taught them, but as someone who revealed to them who they already were, their potential, their fire, their calling. Because the greatest leaders don't give direction. They give permission to be bold, to think, to question, to rise. And that's what you gave, without fanfare, without expectation. You became the living proof that growth never expires, that relevance isn't about trends, that true strength is how softly you can carry your power. That's why they respect you. Not because you were flawless, but because you owned your flaws and rose anyway. You turned regret into wisdom. You turned wounds into wisdom. You turned time into your ally instead of your excuse. And they noticed. Even when they rolled their eyes, even when they seemed distant, even when they didn't say it, they noticed. Because truth has a vibration that penetrates resistance. And your truth, it resonated. It seeped beneath their defenses. It settled in their bones. And one day, when life demands more of them, they'll draw from the well you dug, not the one filled with rules, the one filled with resilience. Because that's what you were. A reservoir of stillness and chaos, a lighthouse in digital storm, a warrior wrapped in grace. They may never throw you a parade. They may never post about you or chant your name. But they will remember in the choices they make when no one's watching, in the way they handle pressure, in how they treat the weak, in the moment they fall and choose to rise. They will remember you because you didn't just live for yourself. You lived through yourself for others. And in doing so, you became timeless. Respect like that, it doesn't rust. It doesn't fade. It doesn't vanish when trends shift or decades pass. It becomes part of the architecture of those who come next. And you become the cornerstone they build on. So continue even now to walk in purpose, even when no one's looking, even when it seems like no one listens, even when it feels like the world has changed beyond recognition, because the truth is it hasn't. The world still needs what it always had: realness, rootedness, reverence. And when you live with all three, you don't just influence a generation. You awaken a legacy. And that legacy will never ask for recognition because it knows it already is. It is in the quiet strength passed from heart to heart. It is in the courage rekindled when all hope feels lost. It is in a steady hand offered to someone trembling at the edge of who they're meant to be. It is in the choice to be better when no one would fault you for giving up. That's what lives on. Not your voice, but your vibration. Not your face, but your footprint. And that footprint is made every single day, not by grand gestures, but by small moments of alignment with truth. It's in how you show up to conversations, how you hold space instead of holding power, how you remain open even when misunderstood, how you choose principle over pride again and again. The younger generation sees that, maybe not all at once, maybe not right away, but they feel it like gravity, like warmth, like a compass that doesn't shout but always points north. And when their world begins to shake, when the illusions of perfection, fame, and speed collapse, they'll remember you, not because you had all the answers, but because you knew how to sit in the questions without losing yourself. They'll remember the way you didn't panic in chaos, the way you didn't belittle their struggle, you validated it, the way you didn't try to impress them, you empowered them. And that empowerment, that's the true inheritance. You don't leave them with things. You leave them with tools. Tools to weather the inner storm, to navigate a world that often forgets the soul, because you taught them without ever needing to say it that real value isn't external, it's internal. That peace isn't passive, it's earned. That legacy isn't a monument, it's a mirror held up to every person you've poured into. And you became a mirror that didn't reflect vanity but possibility. That's why they follow you. That's why they remember you. That's why they respect you. Because you showed them how to be powerful without being cruel, how to be wise without being superior, how to be grounded without being immovable. And now the seed you planted in patience, in pain, and perseverance are taking root, and the forest they become. It will echo with your presence long after your body returns to dust, because you didn't just live. You lifted. You led. You loved without condition, without limit, without fear. That kind of life doesn't fade. It becomes the standard. It becomes the story whispered across generations. It becomes the sacred proof that greatness never dies, it multiplies. So when the question comes, how do you earn the respect of the younger generation? The answer is this: you embody everything you hope they'll become. And then you keep becoming it even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because the younger generation isn't only watching when it's easy, they're watching closer when it's not. They watch when the world turns its back on you, when time forgets your name, when the crowds move on and still you rise, still you walk in truth, still you give. That's when they truly see you, not as someone clinging to the past, but as someone so anchored in purpose that no storm can uproot you. That's when respect turns into reverence, not for what you've done, but for who you are. Because you didn't just give them answers, you modeled the courage to live inside the questions. You didn't just show them how to win, you showed them how to lose with grace, how to heal without hate, how to grow without forgetting who they are. You taught them that the most powerful person in the room is not the loudest, it's the one who listens with their whole soul. You showed them that age is not the fading of relevance, it's the refining of it. That leadership doesn't shout, it shines. That respect isn't earned through intimidation, but through consistency, integrity, humility. And now, you're no longer just a presence in their life. You are a part of their inner architecture. You are the quiet reason they stand tall. The invisible hand that steadies them when fear returns. The echo of courage that calls to them when the noise gets too loud. And long after your time has passed, when they're older, wiser, raising children of their own, they'll catch themselves living out something you once showed them. Maybe it'll be how they face conflict. Maybe it's how they forgive. Maybe it's how they push through a season of darkness. But they'll stop and feel you there, in the pause before they react, in the dignity with which they move, in the standards they refuse to lower. And in that moment, they'll understand what legacy really means. It's not a monument with your name on it. It's a generation of hearts that beat differently because you lived your truth. You were not a relic. You were a revolution. A living, breathing reminder that character never expires, that love never loses power, that truth never fades with age. It deepens. So keep going. Keep becoming. Because the world doesn't just need more noise. It needs more you. More of your presence. More of your purpose. More of your unwavering decision to live as a lighthouse, no matter how long the night. That is how you earn their respect. Not once, but every single day. Every day you choose to rise with clarity instead of complaint, to lead with wisdom instead of worry, to walk with truth instead of titles. You add another thread to the tapestries of legacy that will outlive you. Because respect is not an event. It's not a speech. It's not a moment of applause in a crowded room. It is a lifetime of alignment. It's the daily decision to embody the values you wish the world would live by. And when the younger generation sees that, not perfection, but alignment, they begin to see what greatness really looks like. It's not in flash, it's in fire. That quiet, enduring fire that keeps burning through every season, that adapts, evolves, refines, but never ever goes out. That fire is your gift to them because you've lived through storms they've yet to face. You've walked through losses they can't yet fathom. And instead of letting those wounds close you, you let them carve you into something wise. You let pain refine you. You let time teach you. You let life mature you instead of making you bitter. That's what they're searching for, not someone who made it look easy, but someone who made it through and didn't lose their soul in the process. And when they look at you, your stillness, your self-respect, your steadiness, they begin to understand that being respected doesn't come from being followed. It comes from being anchored. And you are anchored in truth, in love, in unshakable purpose. Let that be your legacy. Let every interaction, every choice, every word you speak be a reflection of that anchor. Not to gain approval, but to offer direction. Because in a world flooded with artificial influence, what they crave most is authenticity. Be that, live that, breathe that. And you'll find that the younger generation doesn't just begin to respect you, they begin to model you. Not in breath, not in language, but in spirit. They will begin to carry themselves with a little more dignity, speak with a little more thought, live with a little more depth, not because you told them to, but because they saw you do it first. And that, more than anything else, is how you become eternal. Not in age, not in name, but in influence. That is your power. That is your place. That is your calling. And when you answer it fully, you won't need to ask for their respect. They'll give it freely. They'll give it quietly. And most of all, they'll give it forever. Because respect earned in silence echoes louder than any applause ever could. It doesn't ask for attention. It becomes the standard by which others are measured. It becomes the invisible architecture of character. And when the younger generation rises into their own storms, into their own fires, into their own defining moments, they'll carry your presence with them. You won't be standing beside them, but they'll feel you in the way they pause before they react, the way they forgive instead of fight, the way they lead from within instead of needing to be seen, because you lived that way, because you chose that path. Not because it was easy, not because it guaranteed praise, but because you understood this is what the world needs most, and in choosing that again and again, you created a ripple through time. Every eye that watched you grow with grace. Every soul that saw you hold your values even when it hurt. Every young person who witnessed you stay true while others folded. They carry that. They carry the tone of your voice when you calmed chaos with wisdom. They carry the way you looked at life, not with bitterness, but with the eyes of someone still willing to learn. They carry the weight of your silence, your patience, your presence. And when they're asked, what shaped you? They won't always have a quote. They won't always have a moment, but they'll have you. Because your legacy isn't built in speeches, it's built in standards. It's built in how you held yourself when no one else was holding you. And that is unforgettable. So keep showing up, keep walking tall. Keep adjusting your crown, not for glory, but because others need to see what royalty really looks like. Not robes, not riches, but a soul that serves, that uplifts, that stands unshaken in a shaking world. Let the young rise, let them challenge, let them ask, stumble, fall, and rise again. But while they do, you remain. Remain rooted, remain whole, remain human. Because in remaining steadfast, open, humble, you give them something most will never offer, a map that doesn't just lead to success, but to significance. You become not just someone they once knew, but someone they carry forward in every room they enter, every life they touch, every legacy they begin to build of their own. And when their time comes, when they are asked to guide the next generation, they will remember what you gave them. Not by accident, not by chance, but because you lived on purpose, with truth, with dignity, with quiet, unstoppable fire. And that is how the cycle continues. That is how greatness becomes eternal. Because eternal greatness isn't loud, it's consistent. It's how you held your posture when no one stood beside you. It's the way your integrity didn't waver under pressure. It's the quiet conviction that truth is not seasonal and character is not conditional. That's what echoes across generation. Not trends, not applause, fame, but timelessness. And timelessness comes only from those who refuse to negotiate their values for the sake of convenience or control. You didn't just tell them how to be strong, you showed them how to stay soft while carrying strength. You didn't tell them how to win, you showed them how to last. And in a world where everything moves fast, you became the proof that what endures is what's rooted. They will remember you for that. Not because you demanded it, but because you deserved it. You didn't chase relevance, you embodied resonance, a resonance that struck deeper than performance, deeper than influence, deeper than time. You were not a season, you were substance, and now that substance lives in them, in how they raise their children, in how they lead teams, and how they speak truth when it costs them, and in how they sit with themselves when the world turns quiet. They won't always be able to explain it, but they'll feel it like a compass buried beneath the noise, a presence that says, remember who you are, a quiet fire that whispers, keep becoming, because you never stopped becoming. Not when the mirror changed, not when your strength faded, not when the world started to overlook you. You rose anyway, and that is what left the mark. Not your victories, but your unwavering devotion to growth. Not your knowledge, but your hunger to keep learning. Not your success, but your willingness to fail with grace, to lose without losing your essence, to evolve without losing your anchor. That is rare, and in its rarity is reverence. So if you ever wonder, did I matter? Did they see me? Did my life really make a difference? Remember this, they saw, they listened, they learned, not always in the moment, but in the becoming, in their future strength, in their unspoken gratitude. Because of how you lived, they will live differently. And because of how you loved, they will love deeper. That's respect, not just given, but felt, not just remembered, but carried. And because of you, they'll know exactly how to pass it on. And that is the final measure of a life well lived, not what you achieved, but what you awakened in others. Because the younger generation will carry many influences, but few will leave the kind of imprint you did. Not the kind that fades when the mood changes, but the kind that anchors them. When the world starts spinning too fast. You didn't hand them a rule book. You handed them your presence, and presence is the rarest gift of all. It says, I see you. I believe in you. I'm not here to control your path. I'm here to light it. And you did. Even if they never said it. Even if they never thanked you out loud. Even if their journey took them far from where you stand, the light you ignited in them will always burn, quietly but eternally. Because in the end, what you offered wasn't just knowledge. It was permission. Permission to lead with integrity, to stand tall without crushing others, to honor pain without becoming it,